Y'all prepare yourself for some ridiculously hype Wiz content. Today, I have exclusive teasers shared to me directly from Wizard101 regarding some upcoming spell changes. Now, mine is the first of many teasers that are being shared with the community, so make sure that y'all keep a lookout. I'll also be covering them on this channel. But the theme of today's video, they are changing a bunch of shadow enhanced spells and scions for literally every school. Now, this specific video is death spell teasers, but a lot of what they're going to be doing in terms of like changing death spells, they're going to be doing it to every school. And some of these changes, they involve stuff that people have had an issue with for literal years. So enough yapping, let's get right into it. Starting right off, this is what they're going to be doing to Kisma's curse in test run. Now, this simple image, it might look like a small little thing, but it's already a lot to talk about. One, it looks like we're going to be getting spell elements for every single shadow enhanced spell. I think this is something we expected to happen, but it's happening this upcoming update. But you might notice some really cool stuff that's happening. One, regardless of whether you use spell elements to go to the top path or the bottom path, both versions of Kisma's curse is only one shadow pit. In live realm right now, if you do PvP, you already probably know this, but if you didn't, well, this is a big inconvenience. If you want to use any shadow enhanced spells at all in PvP, they cost an entire 2 shadow pips. It's not like Shrike or Dark Surge, which only costs 1. That makes a spell like Kisma's curse in live realm almost unusable in PvP. Now, it looks like they're making every shadow enhanced spell that's allowed in PvP 1 shadow pip, but the value of that second shadow pip that you no longer need will be completely moved over into utility. So we're going to be seeing 1 shadow pip spells doing some really cool and powerful stuff. So as you can see by the teaser, the bottom path is a hit that gives you 245 death blade. It's literally like a catch of the day for death, but it's 4 pips and it's a shad. But the top path is also really cool when it comes to Kisma's curse, especially if you're more PvE oriented. And why is that? It's because it looks like they're going to be finally retiring the divide mechanic in Wizard101 entirely with this update. When Mirage first came out, they added a mechanic called divide with some of the shadow enhanced spells that every school got. And the way these work is the more targets you have, the more the damage on the spell divides. So in live realm, a single target Kisma is doing 768, but a double target Kisma is doing half of that to each person that it targets. So it's like a single hit or an AoE, but the divide makes it so unuseful after there's more than 1 target that it's kind of bad. But now they're updating it so that it selectively targets. So now you can choose to have 1 target or multiple, but the drop off in damage will not be as severe as the divide mechanic. It's just basically getting more damage than you otherwise would have with Kisma if you want to use the top path of this spell. So the bottom path is a really cool utility that you could use in PvP and PvE to shield break and get some major offense. And the top path represents a complete retirement of the divide mechanic, which I would argue was making some spells way worse. Moving right along to the next teaser, this is what they're going to be doing to snack attack in test realm. So this teaser is also really something cool because, as always, the bottom path, it's going to be something that we've literally never seen before. But the top path is also bringing back something that they stopped doing, which is using spellments to change the pip cost of spells. What y'all might notice is that the top path is still a weakness push, which is a really weird mechanic that Death gets for using snack attack. But based on which tier you take it up to, you could either make a 5 pip snack attack or a 7 pip snack attack. Now, in my opinion, the bottom path is absolutely ridiculous. I think this is one of the coolest things that they've ever added with spellments to any spell. Snack attack is now going to be a spell that uses a shad to steal up to 4 blades while hitting. Not only is the damage of the bottom path snack attack really awesome, like it's like about as good as a headless. Instead of needing like 8 pips for a skeletal dragon or 7 pips for a scarecrow, now we have a relatively cheap pip cost blade counter, and it's super punishing. Considering Death has all sorts of spells that can literally use blades to do stuff like Wraith, which turns blades into weaknesses, hitting and then stealing 4 blades from your opponent, it could be a devastating way to use a shad as a Death. Very excited for this. What y'all might have already noticed with both snack attack and Kisma is that so much of the value of that second shad that we're used to using in PvP is on the utility, right? A ridiculous double 45 blade thing or stealing 4 blades, this is just not something that was in the conversation before. It looks like our shadow enhanced spells are going to be doing a whole lot more. Now, the next spell teaser, I think, is something that a lot of people care about. Grim Reader. So what you see on your screen is what you can basically do to Grim Reader with spellments in test realm. And the top path is actually quite notably different than in live realm right now. Instead of school specific weaknesses, it's universal weaknesses. I would say that in PvE anyways, universal weaknesses are better. So this is actually a pretty major upgrade to basically the best PvE shad hit that Death Death had. And while it is new that they're using Spellmans as a way to change pip costs for spells like Snack Attack, right now in live round, Grim, you could already do that. Right, if you get Spellmans, you could make a 7-pip Grim and 8-pip Grim. But if you're interested in PvE, what you're basically getting out of this update is a more universally usable Shad hit and more tiers to upgrade it with, so you'll get a slight damage increase. That being said, y'all, you might notice the bottom pat, the one that's allowed in PvP, it's actually doing a lot less damage because it's now 1 Shadow Pip. So 1 Shadow Pip Grim Reader is going to be doing 600 damage, but the actual chromatic weakness, the school-specific weakness that you get for it for using it in PvP, it's slightly better. It's going to be 40% now. So it's essentially like a headless for 1 Shadow Pip, and it does a little bit more. It's like much closer to headless than it currently is, which is about double the damage for that second Shad. I would argue this is the first nerf that we've seen out of the spell teasers, because right now for 2 Shadow Pips, Grim Reader is super worth the damage. Now you don't have super high damage just for racking up Shads. That being said, being able to use 2 of them for 2 Shadow Pips back to back, or being able to Shrike and then Grim, these are new things that were never available before, so that might actually be still a buff. Who really knows how you could combo 1 Shadow Pip Shadow Enhance spells compared to before. The next spell teaser is, I would argue, a more or less forgotten spell, Winged Sorrow. Now, the fact that they're adding Spellmans for both top path and bottom path is a huge difference from what it is in live round right now, which is either you could use it in PvP or you can't by upgrading it to be a 2 Shadow Pip spell. Right, no matter how you look at it, this is new damage for whether you do PvE or PvP, but the 6 pip top path version of this is actually doing well over 1,000 damage, and it's a plague, something that I would argue is very good in a PvE format. So really solid. I don't know where these Spellmans are going to drop. I'm going to be assuming sometime in Arc 3 and Arc 4, there's probably going to be bosses to farm, but 1,000 damage for using 6 pips and a Shad, really cool. I would argue you might want to use this and a different pip version of Grim Reader in PvE. But the bottom path is really interesting as well. So it is 6 pips and a Shad just like top path, but instead of doing like 1,000 damage, it only does about 600, but the utility that it gets is a 6-round infection aura. Now, I think y'all might have actually noticed this if you have a keen eye. Both Shads that we've actually seen, Kisma's Curse and Winged Sorrow, basically do what fusion spells already do, but for the cost of a Shad instead of for fusing 2 separate cards. I think I really love that, because right now, sometimes, yeah, some schools have really cool fusion formulas, but sometimes you just end up sitting on Shads because of the way your school plays anyway. So now you can unlock extra value by using a Shad, by fusing spells. Very similar utility. Do I think this will be super useful in PvP? It totally depends on how useful healing is. Keep in mind, the way auras work, let's say they use a Winged Sorrow on someone, they could simply brace over it, and the 6 rounds of infection aura that you would have had are all gone. So not necessarily a foolproof way to get rid of someone's heals or make them bad for 6 rounds, but very interesting use of Shads that we haven't seen before. Now, this is arguably one of the craziest upcoming changes. This is what they're going to be doing to Khrulhu. Now, this one looks slightly unfinished because it doesn't look like there's a top path, bottom path, so I don't know what PvEers are going to get, and I know that Khrulhu's a big deal. Who knows? Maybe they just keep the 675 damage, you know, AoE, and it's still, you know, very usable in a bunch of scenarios. And I don't think anyone would be complaining, but the PvP allowed version is absolutely ridiculous. So it's 5 pips and 1 Shad, just like Khrulhu has always been, but it's a pretty weak drain that also does a negative weakness aura on your opponent. So not an infection aura like, you know, Winged Sorrow, but an actual weakness aura, and it's 30%, which is way better than a normal weakness aura. For reference, even Storm, when they fuse a Heket with a weakness aura, which is just 15%, even when they go through fusion, they get a 25% weakness aura. Now, Death, simply for having 5 pips and a Shad, they're going to be doing a drain, they're going to be hitting for a little bit, and they're getting a minus 30% weakness aura for 4 rounds. This suffers the same pitfalls as, you know, Winged Sorrow. They could just brace over it. They could just aura over it. However, you also do have aura clears on a Death, so any extra aura utility, especially stuff that's damage weaknessing, I think it's a big deal. I genuinely think Khrulhu might become more used than Grim, simply because of how good it is. This is something we've never seen on the Death School, because harmful auras are new, and we haven't seen a good hit and weakness aura for Death yet. Now, if you made it this far in the video, there's actually some really big info that hopefully a lot of people are excited about, because I think this is something that people have asked for years now. So what you see on your screen is a spell teaser for what they're going to be doing to Death Scion specifically. And why is this ridiculously cool? Right now, Scion Scion is in a weird spot as a spell in general. Why is that? Because in Live Realm right now, you could learn 2 Scions. There's one that's only allowed in PvP and one that's never allowed in PvP, and they do completely different things. Now, the top hat is just doing what we've always seen it do. If you get below 33% HP, it'll do a gigantic monster drain, but that one's not allowed in PvP. But the bottom path version is also really cool because now it's not only allowed in PvP. Now, let's say that you want to just do a weakness spam strat in PvE. If you want to do it in other scenarios, maybe like gold key bosses, certain farming strategy, now you can finally do that. Finally, it looks like they're scaling away from PvP only spells like Scion. Now, y'all might be wondering about like the logistics of 2 spells becoming 1 and then being combined in a spellman path. And here's what they sent me specifically. If you do have the PvP only version of a Scion trained, you'll basically have the bottom path of the Scion basically trained for you when this update goes live. And yes, that does mean if you reset it, you get 75 spellments back. So if you already have this trained, congrats, you got some free spellments, which is really awesome. And if you're worried about the logistics of what they're doing, it looks like they're thinking forward in terms of how spellments and stuff like this will even work. Y'all, there are some big takeaways from these teasers, especially if they hold true across every school, which other people will be covering. This is just a debt school update spell video, but it looks like the value of shadow enhanced spells are going to be way more utility based than we've ever seen them before. Some of the stuff that they could justify shadow spells doing could be nuts considering what we've already seen on death. 2, it looks like they're scaling away from PvP only spells. Hopefully there will be more of a bridge between people that play the game just for PvP and just for PvE. I think that's something we can all get behind. And it also looks like the divide mechanic is finally being retired because it was never really that good to begin with. Let's be honest. I'm sure the big question that a lot of people are going to be having is, where do you get these spellments? Now, while this is probably going to be clear to us when Test Realm comes out, I wouldn't be surprised if they just added these as drops from bosses that you have to scale down to farm, or you open up cantrip chests, or you use elemental retriever or spirit retrieve. There's no reason to suggest that these are going to be any different. They look like main storyline spellaments, which is something that we haven't really seen since last year. All in all, y'all, I think PvE is going to get some really modest buffs, and I think PvP is going to be shaken up in a way that we've never seen it before. And we're finally just going to have 1-pip shadow enhanced spells back again. Those are my big takeaways. None of that is a small thing, so I hope you guys are excited. I want y'all to let me know what you guys think the other spells are going to look like. I will be covering them after the actual content creators that put them out, that got the teasers, do them. So make sure you turn on noties. I'll be reviewing everything. I'm excited about the death spells. I can't wait to see the rest of them. Thank you for putting me in a position where they even reach out to me with these exclusive teasers. I really enjoy making these videos for y'all. Thank you guys so much. Stay awesome, y'all. See y'all soon. And yeah.